You saw her once in a pew behind you, hands folded like a girl in prayer, but her eyes were planning a kingdom. She smiled when the hymn rose, but you felt the chill behind it. A woman who wanted to be chosen by God, but only if she could choose which throne he sat on. She doesn't love you, not because she can't, but because love is the one surrender that would make her smaller. She's memorized every line of your affection like a spy mapping a palace. She will kneel beside your wounds, only to place her crown beside them. She will touch your hair like a saint, while calculating which of your dreams makes her look taller. You believed her tears meant softness, but she weeps for control, for the cruelty of being born a soul, not a god. If you have felt this silence, the silence between the love she promised and the war she waged, then this whisper already belongs to you. Like the video, leave your shadow in the comments, subscribe, and stay near the silence. She will return. You thought she was gentle, the way she folded her hands in her lap, the way she listened, head tilted slightly, like a psalm waiting to be sung. But it was never silence, it was strategy, a quiet battlefield lined with flowers, where your voice would be lured into blooming just enough for her to pluck it. You wanted to believe she was yielding, that her softness was trust, but even her surrender was a weapon. She made you feel chosen, not because she loved you, but because being chosen gave her the power to withhold. She wore no crown, not in gold, not in iron, but it was stitched beneath the lining of her dress, threaded through every glance that looked up at you while measuring your height, your income, your spirit, your shame. You never noticed the calculations hidden in her warmth. You mistook her curiosity for care. But she wasn't studying you to understand, she was studying you to conquer. And you mistook your victory for hers. That was the first lie. You said something once, something trembling, something true, and she held it like a relic. But later, you realized she was weighing it, not cherishing, not holding it like her own heartbeat. She was deciding whether it would serve her, whether your vulnerability made her more admired, more envied, more adored. She wanted your truth only if it draped well around her shoulders. She never loved you, not really. She loved the reflection of herself in your longing. She loved the version of her that your devotion created powerful, magnetic, tragic. The more you suffered, the more sacred she felt. The more you bled for her, the more she appeared worth bleeding for. You were not a person to be cherished. You were a mirror to be manipulated. You saw it too late, the way she changed her posture when others entered the room, the way her affection dimmed when you no longer shone brightly enough to elevate her image. Her love was conditional not on your soul, but on your usefulness. And the cruelest part, she didn't even know it. She believed in her own affection. She believed she was capable of love because she cried, because she clung, because she said all the words. But she was chasing something else. Not you, not even love. She was chasing sovereignty. There is a kind of woman who kneels only when the world is watching, who gives only when it adds to her legend, who suffers publicly, not to heal, but to dominate. Her pain is a crown. Her grief is staged. Her brokenness is her campaign. And you, with your trembling hands and open heart, you were her platform. You remember the first time she looked at you not with tenderness, but with assessment. The moment your spirit cracked and she leaned closer, not to hold you, but to mark the spot. You had become useful. Broken men always are. They make perfect altars. She spoke of love often. Didn't she love as the highest thing? Love as the sacred? But her definition of love was obedience, silence, submission disguised as romance. She loved the version of you that worshipped her. The moment you asked her to kneel, to sacrifice, to give without reward, she vanished. She could not love you in your strength, because your strength reminded her she was not the only sovereign. Your clarity made her crown feel artificial. She needed you in doubt. She needed you dependent. That's how her kingdom held. That's how she ruled. She will never admit this, not even to herself. She will say you were too cold, too distant, that you failed her spiritually, that your masculine heart was never open enough. She will cry, and others will believe her, because the tears are real, but not for love lost for power undone. She weeps for her crown, not your soul. You will remember the way she sighed after making you confess your shame, the way her smile twitched when you bent toward her in apology. She called it intimacy, but it was extraction. You gave her secrets. She gave you a riddle. You gave her time. She gave you performance. You gave her your name. She made it part of her myth. The most painful part isn't that she betrayed you. It's that you still want her, because some part of you believed you could save her from her throne. You believed if you loved her enough, she would remove the crown, but she never wore it to feel loved. She wore it to feel immortal. You don't hate her. That would be too easy. What you feel is more dangerous, a quiet ache for the illusion to return, a hunger to go back to the moment before you saw the truth, before you realized she loved your suffering more than your soul. She still walks in your dreams, doesn't she? Not as a woman, but as a question, a haunting, a half-remembered hymn that made you feel holy when you were only being used. You wake up thinking of her voice, and for a moment, you forget. But your chest remembers. The weight, the absence, the way she looked at you when she thought you couldn't see. She will love again, many times. She will smile, weep, kiss. She will whisper someone else's name in the dark. But always, always she will be searching for something higher than love. Not truth, not connection, not soul, but dominion. A place where her heart is the sun and everyone else is just orbit. You may meet her again one day, and she will pretend not to remember. She will say hello with that same psalm smile, and part of you will still want to kneel. But you won't, not this time, because you finally see it the way she walks, as if earth were beneath her, but God were behind her. The way her silence is not peace, but pressure. The way her tenderness was only ever bait. She never wanted your love. She wanted your worship. And you wanted to be loved by a goddess who was never willing to become human. You saw her staring at herself once, not in vanity, but in silence, as if hoping the mirror would speak. Her reflection wasn't enough, not because she found herself ugly, but because she could not find herself at all. Every gesture she rehearsed, every tilt of her voice, every moment of practiced laughter, none of it anchored her. She was beloved by many, but the praise clattered through her like wind through a hollow church. She had built a throne out of mirrors, but when she sat on it, there was no weight. She wears confidence like a scent, thick, deliberate, always arriving before her. But under it is a woman who fears stillness, because in stillness, she might meet herself. And if she meets herself, she might have to admit there is nothing there but a collection of masks, stitched from applause, fear, and hunger. She doesn't want to be ignored, but she's terrified of being known, so she performs, not for others, but for the ghost of who she thinks she's supposed to be. She believes she was unloved as a girl, not because no one tried, but because they loved a version of her that wasn't real. And so she made herself unreal on purpose, to stay in control of the rejection. Better to be admired than abandoned. Better to be praised for the mask than punished for the face underneath. Every smile she gives you is edited, every vulnerability a negotiation. She reveals just enough of her wounds to earn your closeness, but never so much that she risks being rejected again. Her pain is always curated, her honesty always symmetrical, even when she cries. There's a mirror nearby. You tried to get close, didn't you? You believed her trembling. You thought this is it, the real her. You held her in the dark and thought you were inside something sacred. But it was another script, another scene in the movie of herself. And you were just cast as the next believer. She does not lie with words. She lies with silence, with pauses too perfectly timed, with glances that suggest more than they mean. She wants you to think you've uncovered her, that you're the first to see behind the veil. But the veil was designed for that, to make you feel special for seeing only what she placed there. She longs to be free, but she won't remove the crown of performance. She prays for real love, but only if it doesn't dismantle the stage, because real love asks for the self, not the seduction, not the illusion, the actual self. And she has long since buried it beneath layers of archetypes: the wounded girl, the untouchable muse, the misunderstood queen. She claims no one ever chose her, but she's never stayed still long enough to be chosen. She shifts, adapts, molds herself to the fantasy of whoever's looking. And when they fall in love, she resents them, because they fell in love with a ghost, a projection, a crown with no head beneath it. Her despair isn't that no one loves her, it's that she no longer believes she's lovable when not adored. Attention has replaced intimacy. She needs to be seen, but only on her terms. And those terms are the very chains that keep her unseen. You asked her once, what do you want? And she said, to be safe. But safety, to her, means never being vulnerable, never being known. She doesn't want love. She wants control over the appearance of love, because to love is to risk being left. And she was left long before you ever touched her. She dresses like mythology. She speaks like scripture. She surrounds herself with symbols, crystals, poems, feathers, fire. But there is no altar, only smoke. She believes the rituals will make her real, that if she repeats the incantation enough times, the pain will become power. But the pain is still there. It watches her from behind her own eyes. It waits for her to stop performing. And you became a stagehand, carrying the lights, the backdrop, the emotional scaffolding. You thought if you loved her gently enough, she would come down from the throne, that she would step into your arms like a mortal. But she never did, because she believed the throne protected her from the past, from the memory of that first betrayal, that first dismissal, that first time she cried and no one came. She still hears that silence in every compliment, in every kiss, in every moment after pleasure when the room goes quiet. The silence says, they will leave. So she gets there first. She withdraws before you do. She accuses before you betray. She disappears before you can stop loving her. You never stood a chance, because the game was never about love. It was about control. She cannot allow herself to be loved freely, because love without control is terrifying. It exposes her. It dissolves her. It demands a real face, and she has not worn one in years. Her heart is not dead, just buried beneath layers of glass. And every time someone reaches for it, she flinches. She wants them to see her but not touch, to admire her but never stay, because to stay would mean seeing the cracks, and the cracks would mean she's human, and to be human is to be helpless again. She talks about femininity like it's magic, and it is, but not the kind she uses. Her magic is a fortress, a spell of perfection. But femininity isn't perfection. It's bleeding, it's chaos, it's aching arms and trembling mouths, but she can't allow that. So she smiles, she poses, she collects more reflections, and when the light is gone, she curls up beside the throne, wondering why she still feels unloved. You will never forget the moment you saw it, not in her face, but in her eyes. The moment she realized you saw behind the curtain and the fear that flickered there. Not anger, not hate, but fear. That you would walk away, now that she was only human. And when you didn't walk, she did. She will say it wasn't the right time, that the energy changed, that she needed space. But what she meant was, you saw me, and I cannot bear to be seen without the mask. And now she watches others, from a distance, playing the same role, hoping one of them will finally love the real her without demanding the performance. But they never do, because they don't know how, because she won't let them. The throne remains empty, but she still guards it, as if her soul were hidden beneath it, as if to step away would mean becoming no one, but she was already someone. You knew it. You saw her not the woman she showed the world, but the girl behind the mask, asking, without words will you love me, if I'm not divine? And your answer, unspoken, still echoes, yes. But she never stayed long enough to hear it. She stood at the edge of something holy, not a temple, not a promise, but you, with your trembling certainty, your flawed but offered hands. You never asked her to be perfect, only real, only present, only willing. But she mistook that for a trap. She called it too much, too fast, too soon, as if love needed time to become something it already was. You gave, not in grandeur, but in the slow, humiliating ways that count. You listened when you were tired. You forgave without being begged. You adjusted, learned, stayed awake when she couldn't sleep. You sacrificed not your dignity, but your comfort. And when she asked you to bleed, you did so quietly, just to prove your devotion wasn't a transaction. She called it noble, she called it rare, but she never matched it. She offered mystery instead of truth, performance instead of presence. You asked her once gently, without demand, who are you when you're not being admired? She laughed, not with joy, but dismissal, as if the question itself was invasive. But you weren't trying to expose her. You were trying to meet her. She didn't understand. She thought love was a stage where she could be applauded for showing just enough of herself to remain unattainable. But real love doesn't want a performance. It wants presence, sweat, grief, smallness, the mundane silence of two people breathing in the same room with no one to impress. She couldn't bear it. You watched her in moments of hesitation when her guard slipped, and you glimpsed something soft, not weak, not broken, but soft, alive. A woman who wanted to rest, who wanted to stop performing, but each time she clawed her way back to the pedestal, because up there she could control the lighting, the angle, the applause. Down here, she might have to confess she's just like you. She demanded everything that made you a man, your strength, your confession, your consistency. She devoured it, she tested it, she called it proof of your worth. But when the moment came for her to offer something in return, not her body, not her words, but herself, she vanished. Not in rage, but in silence. She does not want to be known, not in the way that would require sacrifice, because to sacrifice is to admit value, and she fears her own value is conditional. Conditional on being adored, on being pursued, on being slightly out of reach. If she gives herself fully, honestly, and it is not enough, then the illusion dies. And she would rather live inside that illusion than risk the death of it. You were never her enemy. You were her test, her mirror, her moment of decision, and she failed it not because she was cruel, but because she was afraid. Afraid that if she stepped toward you empty-handed, you would see the truth that her power was borrowed, that her allure was armor, that her divinity was stitched from abandonment. She wanted your loyalty without giving you hers. She wanted your soul, but kept hers behind locked doors. She let you undress her body, but never her history. She let you see her smile, but never her shame. And every time you tried to draw her closer, she danced backward, calling it sacred space. But it was fear. Just fear. She spoke in riddles. She cried in metaphors. She loved in absences. And yet, you loved her still, because somewhere beneath the crown, beneath the veil, beneath the performance, you sensed a girl who once believed in love before it was taken from her, and you were foolish enough to think you could give it back. But love that is not received becomes punishment. Every kindness you gave began to rot inside her. Every truth you spoke became a threat. She accused you of control because your honesty made her lies feel smaller. She accused you of pressure because your commitment highlighted her avoidance. She said she needed space, but what she needed was distance from herself. She will tell her next lover that you smothered her, that you demanded too much, that she was healing and you moved too fast. But she will never say the part that matters, that you asked for her to stand beside you, not above you. And she could not bear the equality, because power, for her, is love. And if you do not give her the upper hand, she cannot feel safe. She has never known a love that didn't ask her to prove her worth. And so, she recreates that ritual demand, withdrawal, reward. She loves conditionally because she was loved conditionally. And now, even freedom feels dangerous. You gave her a simple thing, your truth, your soul laid bare, and she looked at it like a gift too costly to unwrap. She turned away, not because it wasn't beautiful, but because to receive it, she would have to give, and giving would mean vulnerability, and vulnerability is the one throne she cannot sit upon. She loved being loved. She did. She lit up when your eyes softened. She held your hand tighter when you trembled. But love is not enough when someone is building a fortress. You cannot pour wine into a closed fist. You cannot build a home in someone's absence. She left quietly, maybe with a text, maybe with a lie, maybe with a long explanation that sounded wise but said nothing. She will say she needs to find herself. But she will never find herself alone, because the self she's seeking is buried beneath layers she refuses to shed. She will return, someday. Not to apologize, but to see if you still orbit her. She will reach out under the guise of kindness. A birthday message. A dream, she said, reminded her of you. But what she's really asking is, do I still have power here? You will know what to say, not cruelly, but clearly. You will not beg, you will not prove, you will not remind her of what you gave. You will simply say nothing, and in that silence, she will hear the thing she fears most, not rejection, but irrelevance. Because what she could not understand is that love is not a resource. It is not extracted. It is not earned through mystique. It is given, and when it is refused, it returns to the giver. She asked for your fire, but offered no candle. She demanded your depth, but stood ankle deep. She wanted to be seen, but wore armor to the mirror. And now, the throne she built from your devotion is empty, and she sits beside it, wondering why no one kneels anymore. But you are no longer kneeling. You are walking away. There is a room she returns to when no one is watching. It has no mirrors, no candles, no names, only a dress she never wore, folded beside a letter she never sent. The fabric still holds your scent, though she will never admit it. Sometimes she touches the envelope. Sometimes she wonders what would have happened if she had stayed, but she never opens it. She tells herself it's better that way, that mystery is holier than truth. Outside, the world still applauds. Inside, the silence asks, what did you keep by refusing to give? And the answer never comes.